All right, this is going to be, I guess, the first video that I do. Basically, my name's Ryan. Tell you a little bit about me. And it doesn't really matter because it's the first video and probably no one's going to watch it. But several years ago, like 6, 7 years ago, I used to do some inking and coloring production for comic books. Nothing famous. I'm not a big name guy or anything like that, and in no way should my opinion matter whatsoever. Basically, I just started doing these videos because I saw that people had some questions that I had questions about, and mainly I was looking for things that weren't common questions that I knew how to do, but I wanted to see if there was better or different ways to do it, to see which I liked better. And what it turned out was no videos really touched on what I was talking about anyway, and I would see people asking the same questions in comments, so here we are. This first video is going to talk about a little bit about comic book production and mainly about the guidelines on comic book paper. And I have some notes that I jot down that are just slightly off camera real quick, but basically you have three main guidelines on any comic book paper as I kick the crap out of the tripod. Sorry about that, people. Your comic book paper is going to have a live area, which is the innermost guideline, a trim area, which is the middle guideline, and then a bleed guideline, which is the outermost guideline of your paper. Now, this is true, I believe, I say way too much. I am horrible at public speaking. I apologize, people. I believe manga paper has the same three guidelines. I know they have a live area and a bleed area, and I know they have a trim area. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I have some manga paper set aside. I'll get into paper in another video and paper selection and what paper you should use. Basically, what paper you should use is really up to you and the materials you use. So if people are using materials similar to me or want to, that's what that video is kind of geared towards. But, so these three guidelines have different purposes. And I'm going to talk about them real quick. The live area, the innermost area, is like a suggestion. Basically, it's a safe zone. Anything that is inside of this innermost border is safe. It's not going to get cut off, anything like that. So what the recommendation is, any important text, I say all text, any important text or any important actions, characters, whatever may be going on, should take place inside the live area. This is to make sure it does not get trimmed or cut off during the printing and binding process. The next one is the trim area. This area is theoretically where the paper is going to be trimmed after reduction before binding. And the reason for that is this isn't so much true nowadays, but decades ago when comics were first around, printers could not print all the way to the edge of the paper. And still today, they really don't, and I keep bumping the tripod. I'm really sorry, people. I had this thing going right over my shoulder so we can see, and when I start doing drawing and how-to videos, it's going to be even worse. But, so, the trim area is basically when you want to do a full page bleed, which is where the artwork extends all the way to the edge of the printed page. They have to have the art oversized for what it's going to be when it's actually printed, and they actually physically cut the paper down to the dimensions of the final product. That way you don't have any white space. Now you may say, you know, I'll get to that. It has to do with the dimensions of the trim portion and the final product. The American comic book standard printed out after reduction is 6:9. That's what the size of the page is. And what that equates to is the same ratio as the 10:15 trim area on paper. What does that mean? It means that theoretically, the trim area, after everything's trimmed off, is going to be the same size as the printed, finalized booklet, comic book. Why I say theoretically? Because there's some other stuff we're going to get into here in a second. So why can't you just bleed all the way to that line and be done with it? Well, because there's some inconsistencies with also the paper's guidelines, the printer's guidelines, and human error, really. So the first example I can say is if we were to draw all the way out on this paper, we're going to run into some white area. Why? Because this live area should be, or I'm sorry, the trim area should be a total of 10:15 inches. It is not. This Canson Fanboy paper is closed. It's 9 12/16 by 15 inches. So it is slightly, ever so more narrow than 10 inches. Meaning if I stop that line art right at the trim area and I was trying to do a full page bleed, there would be white space on my pages when it comes to the width, not on the top. And that's assuming that the printer was to trim it perfectly. I don't trust anybody. So that's why there's these like built-in fail-safes. That's why they're guidelines. So the bleed area on this Canson paper is 10 by 5/16 by 15 1/4 inches. So just outside, you know, it's safe to say it's outside of 10 by 15. No matter where they trim that paper from the trim line out, you're going to get your artwork if you draw it all the way out to that bleed line. That's what it's intended for, is just that. It takes for account paper inconsistencies and printer inconsistencies and allow you to make sure that your artwork takes up the full page. Yes, artwork is getting trimmed off. Yes, you know, why am I going to spend all this time drawing extra artwork just to have it trimmed off in the final process? Well, you want a full page bleed, don't you? That's just the way it's done. Welcome to the printing process of, you know, decades prior. Digitally, if you're doing digital production, none of this matters. If you do digital publishing of your artwork and you wanted to know about these comic book guidelines, I'm sorry to waste your time through this entire video because they do not matter whatsoever. The reason is you're not printing from your digital, you know, publication. Now, if you plan on possibly taking it to print, you would do what I do and would draw and scan according to guidelines, scan the full page. That way you can send those images to a publisher at full 11 by 17 and they can do what they normally do with it after they print it out and everything. It'll follow the normal process, like after it goes to color. So, digitally, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want as long as your page size is consistent from one page to the other. Digitally, it does not matter whatsoever. That's the bottom line. What paper should you use? We'll get into that in another video. I just want to explain the guidelines a little bit and the purpose behind them. Mainly if you're going to print, that's what this is for. If you're not going to print, you don't even have to use comic book paper. If you're doing digital publication, use whatever you have handy. That's my advice to you. You don't have to use this stuff. If you want to feel like you're doing it, you know, authentically, fine, whatever, use it. Just know that you're going to pay a premium for this blue line stuff, and you're going to pay a premium for it to be an 11 by 17 tabloid size. So you're going to pay more. For example, this 24 sheet professional or artist series Canson fanboy stuff costs around $1 a page. I believe, yeah, 24 sheets, it cost a little, yeah, right around 25. I think I picked it up for like 24 bucks, $25. Eon boards are 12 pages for $15. Blue line's even more expensive, and if you happen to be able to buy, sometimes Marvel and DC open up submissions and they'll allow you to buy their board for doing submissions, typically are $2 a page. And it's just Bristol. I know the DC and Marvel Bristol board is typically 400 to 500 series Bristol, which is why it's more expensive. This is slightly better. I'd say this is around 400 series, which is a little bit more expensive than 300. It's not $1 a page though, by any means. It's a little bit less. You can use regular, this is just regular copy paper. I do not recommend it for if you're doing anything ink wise, or I don't recommend it in general. But you could use 11 by 14. If you're not going to print, it doesn't matter what ratio your stuff's in. So it doesn't have to adhere to the 2 by 3 ratio of 6 by 9 and 10 by 15. Or you could use and buy 14 by 17 and cut it down, which is why I have these 14 by 17 sitting around, because sometimes you run out of board and you are not going to wait for your paper mill to send you more board. So I will cut it down and deal with a slightly less quality paper. However, what I've noticed is I have the 300 series stuff, excuse me, a little bit of a burp there in the middle of talking. 300 series stuff is adequate for doing pen and ink. It really is. Although I've been kind of put off by Strathmore's inconsistent quality lately. You'll get one pad that's great and one pad that bleeds horribly. So it doesn't really matter. Test out your papers, find something that works, and draw on it. That's, as long as you're drawing, that's what's important. Especially with digital publication. I mean, most people doing digital publications these days aren't even doing physical drawing anymore on paper. They're doing it through tablets, right into a digital format. And I hope you enjoyed that nice little shaky worldview. Hit the tripod again. So And like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's just mainly to explain, that's what this whole video is for, that the guidelines don't matter if you're doing digital work. If you're not doing comic books at all, you just want to draw on the style of comics or manga, those guidelines are completely pointless. They're pointless in general if you're doing digital publication. If you plan on having it go to print, or if you're going to self-publish through print, they are important. Or if you're, if you're working for DC or Marvel or Dark Horse or any of those companies, you shouldn't be watching this video. But anyway, my name is Ryan again. If you have any suggestions or questions about what you would like to see in a video or about this video, leave them in the comments below. And I will happily try to respond to you directly in the comments. But if I feel that it's better addressed visually in a video, I will do that as well. I have some free time right now, so I would love to answer any questions that you may have that deal with comic production, or even how to draw. However, I believe that there are better artists out there than myself for how to draw videos. Mark Crilly is an amazing guy and takes time to do a how to draw video every week. So check out his channel, Mark Crilly, and look at his stuff. Like I said, there's plenty of how to draw videos on YouTube, but I want to focus on more unique things that people may not deal with so much, and I'm not some big name guy, so I got some free time. So just go ahead, again, thanks for watching. Take care.